Hello, everyone. I'm Renita Young of NABJ. I am the host of Your Money Story at Bloomberg Quick Take, a personal finance show. And today we're going to talk to you about side hustles. Time is money, the art of the side hustle. We know that many of us have many reasons why we need side hustles in this industry. It could be out of need, or it could be out of really wanting to practice a passion of ours. And so I have a group of excellent panelists here who are going to tell you all about their own side hustles, why they have them, and how they navigate things like conflicts of interest and contracts. So let me introduce you to our first panelist, who's actually at the bottom of your screen. Brianna Hamblin is a morning reporter for Spectrum News in Rochester, New York. And she started her career reporting for CBS 19 in Charlottesville, Virginia, after she graduated from the University of Virginia in 2018. And so her side hustle, she'll tell you more about, but she is a dance fitness instructor, and she also created a dance class. Number two, we have Jarrett Hill. Wave to the folks for us. Jarrett Hill is an award-winning journalist, speaker, media trainer, and host. He contributes to the New York Times, Variety, NBC News, CNN International, Channel Q, among other outlets. And he's also the president of NABJ's Los Angeles chapter. And he co-hosts Fanti. It's a maximum fun podcast chosen as one of Apple's podcast best of 2020. Thank you for being here, Jarrett. And I also want to introduce you to two others. Carmaine Means is a national network news cinematographer and a Federal Aviation Administration licensed drone pilot for the Warner Media in Chicago, the Chicago Bureau. She's the first African-American woman who's been licensed as an FAA drone pilot in the United States. And so her prior career experiences, they include working at the CBS News Network division and also in the Los Angeles Bureau, and as a TV news photojournalist for WBBM TV in Chicago. And last but not least, Jesse Washington is a journalist for ESPN's Undefeated and co-author of I Came as a Shadow, the autobiography of former Georgetown University basketball coach John Thompson. But before joining the Undefeated, Jesse Washington covered race in America for the Associated Press, and he's also been the editor-in-chief of two magazines about hip hop and street basketball, and he published two coffee table art books. Folks, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Art of the Side Hustle. We're going to jump right into it. So the first thing I think is most interesting about life in general is how people make money and how people spend it. But we're going to talk about how people make money. And so I want to start with Brianna. First, folks, it's interesting and important to note that we have everyone here from different levels of their career, different parts of the industry, who can show you what side hustles look like to them and how they make them work for them. And so I want to start with Brianna. First, I want everyone to do this, but we'll start with Brianna for a reason. Explain your main job, what your side gig is, and why you decided to get the side gig.
Yeah, so my main job is being a reporter right now. Like you said, it's for Spectrum News. I'm the morning reporter for all sorts of breaking news in the morning. And then my side gig is I'm a dance instructor, and at the same gym that I'm a dance instructor, dance fitness instructor, I actually work at the nursery at my gym. I actually just got finished working there like 10 minutes ago. And so why I got a side gig, I started this side gig being a dance fitness instructor in Charlottesville. And I had a mentor and a coworker who was already a dance fitness instructor. And so she kind of took me under her wing. I've always been a dancer, so it fit perfectly. It was right up my alley. So she showed me how to be a dance fitness instructor. And I mean, obviously I got it because of some little extra money. And then you also get a free gym membership, which, being a new reporter, you don't make a lot of money at all. So having that extra fee to not have to pay monthly was nice. And Yeah, so those were two of the main perks.
You're on mute.
Oh, you're muted. Did
I'm
I answer all
on
parts of
mute,
that
but I'm
question?
not. Thank you so much for explaining that. Like we said, people have different reasons for having side hustles. And so Jarrett has chosen to stay independent. Jarrett, tell us how you make your main money and what's considered your side hustle. So what's your primary income, not the amount, but what you do to make your primary income, and then what's considered your side hustles, if you can explain.
Yeah, so I would say that what's interesting for me is that my side hustles and my main income are gradually becoming more and more of one thing. So I would say that my main income is from Fanti, the podcast that I host, and from writing in various different places, and media training, right? So those are kind of all the three like elements of me using my journalism side of my life. My side hustles have really varied over the years, and one of them has been interior design. And then also there's an element of it that started kind of as media training, and media training just kind of like grew and grew and grew into be more and more money for me. And then I've really been able to grow all of those things into becoming like more and more equal parts of my career. So it's been pretty cool that way for me. And I started with interior design because I'd gotten laid off at the Tampa affiliate that I was at. And so I was there. I had moved to Tampa for this job. I was there I was on air there for like 8 months, and then they laid me off. They laid off my position across the whole country. And I was like, but I moved here for this job. What are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? It was a difficult situation. And I had just finished decorating my apartment, and I had to put it on Airbnb because I was trying to figure out how to make money. And at that time, Airbnb would come and like shoot your apartment and like take all these beautiful photos of it. And so I put those photos on Facebook, and I started getting people saying like, oh, this is so beautiful. And someone said, well, hey, would you come and decorate my apartment? And I was like, would you write me a check? And they were like, yes. And so I did it. And so that was like the beginning of my design career. But I had been doing interior design for other folks since high school, and I'd help my like friend do their room, and then another person and another person. And so it never even occurred to me for it to be a job until, I needed the money, and it worked out really well for me. And I don't do as much interior design now just because I don't have the time and bandwidth, but I do still enjoy doing it when I can. And so it really was born out of necessity and opportunity kind of meeting at the right moment.
And passion and talent, natural talent.
Yeah,
I
for
really
sure.
like that. I really like that because you also have talked about how you have to enjoy what you're doing when you choose a side gig. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I want to move it over to Carmaine. First African American woman licensed as an FAA drone pilot in the US. Tell us your main job. I know, snaps. Listen, you guys feel free to unmute yourselves and react, by the way, because we're all in this conversation, as you know. But Carmaine, tell us what's considered your main job and your side gigs, and why you decided to get side gigs. I think that your combination is very interesting. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you for having me today. My main job is a cinematographer for Warner Media in the divisions of HBO Max, for CNN's the CNN documentary unit. And that's my main job 7 days out of the week. My side gig actually was derived from me being a photojournalist at WBBM and at ABC at the time. I was freelancing. So I was doing both. And a man came in to do a segment about drones. And I was like, oh, that looks cool. I think we could use that in our field. So I ended up getting one, being self-taught and self-trained. And they offered the licensing. So I went and got the licensing. I started the business. People were like, oh, can you come and drone my house? Drone, they were real estate agents, or come and drone for a business and different types of businesses, construction businesses and all types of things. So that's how that got started. And pretty much like everybody else, sure, can I get paid for it? And they're like, yeah, you can get paid for it. I mean, it's not just come and do it. So at the time, there were much less drone pilots than what there are now. So that became pretty much my side hustle at the time. And then as I got into network news, I still do it when I have time for it, but network requires you to be on call and traveling a lot. So, or I contract someone else now to do jobs for me. So I still get a piece of that pie and they get a piece of whatever they're going to get. And it's all good.
That's good. It's important to note here that you are being paid full time by Warner Media, and you also have your own company on the side, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we'll get into how that's possible in a little bit. Jarrett, did you unmute? Did you want to say something?
No, I was just like, go off for having people that you can contract out. I thought that was amazing. That's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, great. So, and now I want to introduce you to Jesse Washington. Well, we did introduce him already, but Jesse has had an amazing career and he's still doing amazing things, of course, but you've also launched and published magazines. And right now, your main job is working with the Undefeated. Tell us what your side gig is right now and why you decided to have it.
Right. So right now my side gig is writing I wrote a book, the autobiography of Coach John Thompson, and which could be considered a full-time job in and of itself. I've always had side gigs, though. Ever since I graduated from college and started working at the Associated Press, it was writing for hip hop magazines or starting a street basketball magazine or publishing coffee table art books with my dad about Black artists. And now it's a book about a legendary Black coach. And the common denominator is that it's things that I'm passionate about and things that I'm really interested in and I love to do. And so doing the book with Coach Thompson was great. And that's my main side hustle. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because it was meaningful, although the money turned out to be pretty good. And now I'm looking into, there's somewhat of a demand for me to write another book. So I think that that's a side hustle that's going to continue.
Excellent. I like that this was born out of a passion of yours. And then it turned into your side hustle. Who knows? May even be your main gig one day. And so I should pause and say that we also want to thank Tori Parrish, who's a business reporter at Newsday, for putting this panel together. Thank you so much, Tori. And also, folks, can you please do us a favor and use the Q&A function to ask your questions? But if you'd like to give comments, feel free to put those in the chat section, okay? All right, so I actually want to pick back up with what Jesse said and roll it over to Brianna. Jesse talked about choosing a side hustle that you love. Brianna, you love dancing and you've been able to kill two birds with one stone. You get your workout while you're making money doing it and you get your gym membership. And so just how does it feel to be able to do that for you? And has it given you other ideas of how to do more of it?
Yeah, no, I totally love it. It's a job, but I also, it's my happy place. I actually had someone attend my class last weekend that was like, I thought you were the reporter. It's so nice to see you up there smiling, because you're always doing the doom and gloom news, but here you are. She was like, I can totally tell you're in your zone. And I'm like, oh, thanks. So yeah, it's a great way to, again, I get my workout in, I get a little extra money on the side, and I'm passionate about it. So it doesn't ever feel like work. It feels like I'm just getting together with some ladies and some men who then become part of my community. And they've become they love supporting me. So they're like, oh my God, I saw you in the news today. Or they want to come up to me to tell me story ideas. So I think it's also helped in that way. And I think people, when they see you in the news, they also want to see you actually out and about in their communities. So I think it has helped me in many different ways.
That's pretty good, because one would wonder how you would deal with possible conflicts of interest with that. Is it a problem that you're advertising your classes, which people pay for to go to, even, eventually? Is it a problem with your job? How did you even have that conversation at work? Or was it a problem, or is it supported?
Yeah, so I kind of just when I moved here, as soon as I moved in, I was like starting to look for a gym that I could continue dancing at. I honestly didn't run it past my bosses because to me this is a job that it's a leadership position. Again, it gets you out in the community. So if anything, like if anyone were to bring it up to me as an issue, I have a number of reasons of why I should still be doing it. And so I was ready for that conversation. But I mean, I've been open about it. They've seen that I've been doing it and they support it. They love it. They like asking me questions about it. Think it's funny. like, and so the only time I've run into some type of conflict of interest, you know, the whole gym and COVID thing has been a big story. So I just couldn't, you know, do the story about the own gym that I work at. I had to choose a different gym. So that was really the only time I've had to stop and think about it.
Okay, that's good. I wonder, do you ever pitch any segments that might include that talent of yours?
I've been trying to figure out a way to do it. I've been trying. Right now, I'm like known as the news of day reporter in my morning shift. So I haven't really been able to figure it out, but still thinking. So if you have any ideas, let me know.
I actually do have some ideas. I'll talk to you offline about that.
Oh,
and
yay.
So one of the things that I think, so for you, it works well to be able to still be a reporter and be an instructor. One helps out the other, it sounds like. But do you have trouble maintaining your maintaining your reputation as a journalist? It doesn't seem like it, but is there anything that you make sure you do special? Do you separate them or do you just blend them on one social media handle for IG or TikTok or Twitter?
Yeah, right now I have one Instagram. I only actually just recently, like I was promoting it on my story, but I only just recently started putting some of my like dance clips on a TikTok that I literally just started, still trying to figure out that whole app on TikTok, and then posting them on my Instagram. To me, unless like a news station, which mine hasn't said this yet, but unless a news station were to specify that they wanted that separate, to me, my Instagram is a place where you can see me as my whole person. Like I'm not just a reporter. I am a dance instructor. I go see my family. I have, you know, loved ones. So that's how I see my Instagram. And I hope, and it is public. Bree Reports, if you want to follow me, BRI. But yeah, so I haven't separated it. Now, if things were to pick up more on the dance side, I might consider it. But right now it's still growing. So, or on Instagram, it's still growing. So I haven't decided to separate that yet.
Okay. But the same similar vein about how it's something that you love. Jarrett, you talked about how important this was. And so what would be your advice on how to find a good side hustle if you need one?
I would say that one of the things that really happened for me, like I said, it was getting laid off and then someone asking me to help them. And one of the other ways that I've been kind of looking at the work that I could do outside of what I was already doing was talking with my friends about like, how do y'all view what I could be doing, right? And I think that sometimes it's really a good perspective to be able to offer you, whether it's for career, whether it's for personal life things, is like, talk to the tribe of people that you have around you, because I refer to my best friends as the council, and they know that like that is the name of the group that they are all a part of. And so yeah, and like the council has come together when I was trying to decide if I should run for president of NABJ for a couple of different things. And so it's been great for me to be able to get that perspective from people who know me and get me and understand the way that I move and think. And I think it's a great way for people to be able to get a different perspective on the same thing, right, on themselves. And so that is probably a great way to be able to figure out what your side hustle is. But if you're trying to figure out what that is for yourself, another way might just be like, what is something that I would do for free, right? Like, what is something that I would really just enjoy doing if I didn't have to do it? And my guess would be that Brie would probably still be like dancing and like enjoying dancing if she wasn't getting paid for it. And I think that sometimes a side hustle can be that, and sometimes it might be driving Uber or Lyft or whatever it is. But it can be a myriad different things. But if you're looking for something that is like, what am I really passionate about, and sometimes that's hard to figure out, that's a great way to be able to ask some folks, how they could see you doing something else.
Very good, very good. And involve your tribe. And the council, I love it. I used to call the people who I would go to for career advice my personal board of directors. But then you have a close council who are your people who know you and love you. And so, wait, one question that people always want to know about Jarrett is when it comes to contracts or even employment agreements that are at will, which, as we know, the contract locks you in for a certain amount of time. At will means that you can quit or they can fire you at any time. But whether it's an employment contract or employment agreement or a contract, like when you first, you brought some excellent insight on how navigating those contracts work and navigating your side gigs. And navigating specifically restrictive contracts that say, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. How do you even deal with that when you first go into a job? Let's say you already have your side business or your side gig set up, similar like Brianna had already was a dance instructor. How do you go in and make sure that's still protected?
So I think that if this is a new position, you can go in and say, like, these are the things that I'm already doing, right? And say to them that you want to make sure that you can continue to do those things, especially if there's not a direct conflict, right? So for Brianna, when she went into that position, that's one of those places where you can say, I also work at a gym, and I'm not like working at the news station across the street. I'm not like competing with what we're doing here, but also, if you are already in your contract, right, and you're already like, and you want to do something differently, you can go back in and ask for that to be changed, right? You can go in and ask for that to be negotiated. That's often referred to as a carve out. And the other piece of that is when you go to renegotiate your contract, if you're on a termed contract where it's 2 years or something like that, and it's coming back up, that's a great opportunity for you to go in and say, actually, before I sign this new contract, I want to make sure that I can do X, Y, and Z. And I think one of the important things that people don't think about, and I often hear this with folks who are more veterans that aren't necessarily as engaged on social media, is your social media handle, right? As we were talking about the ways that you're engaged on Twitter or Instagram or what have you. Sometimes those outlets will want you to put like their name in your handle, Jarrett Hill NBC or Jarrett Hill, NYT or whatever. And you don't have to do that, right? Like that's not something that you're required to do. But if your company starts out your social media, they're going to have more ownership over it. And so when I was at WFTS in Tampa, the ABC Action News, some folks on the air there, like the anchors that had been there for a longer time, weren't on social media, but the network started their social media for them, and they had WFTS in their name. But if they leave, WFTS gets to hold on to that social media, right? But when I came to that station, I already had a social media following, and I told them, like, I want to make sure that I own my name. And like, there's little parts about that, right, that are really important. They might want you to use your work email address to be able to sign up that account. That's a way that they can hold on to it. Or they want you to put their name in your account. And so it's important to always be thinking about those things. And you can have that written into your contract that you can hold on to it. Because oftentimes if it's not in your contract, they can still try and take it even after you leave. So those are kinds of important things that you should be thinking about when you're going into these agreements so that you can protect yourself and hold on to the social media following that you've been able to grow, or hold on to the side hustle that you've got.
You made another really important note about people who maybe they retain agents to help negotiate their contracts, and why you may want to consider having an attorney instead of an agent. So tell us what you thought about that, why, and how it's possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of folks are really eager to get an agent. And like, I think that part of that is a vanity thing, right? Like, I mean, sometimes it feels cool to have an agent. Oh, I'll have my agent call you, right? and sure, it's great. But sometimes an agent isn't really necessary. And sometimes an attorney is actually really what you need, because the agent oftentimes, really what you need them to do is execute that contract, right? To make sure that all of the contract terms are something that, you know, are in line with what you're looking for. And so it's important to always be thinking about when you're going into these agreements so that you can protect yourself and hold on to the side hustle that you've got. So those are kinds of important things that you should be thinking about when you're going into these agreements so that you can protect yourself and hold on to the social media following that you've been able to grow, or hold on to the side hustle that you've got. are in your favor, because the contract that comes from the company is going to be in their favor, right? Like they are trying to protect themselves. And so I have found that I have a news agent, I have a book agent, and I have other things. But like I also have an attorney. And so the attorney has actually been really, really helpful for me when it comes time for me signing on with different folks, when I'm going to be going into other agreements that I'm making, because the attorney actually is the person that will oftentimes be able to go into that contract and say, oh, or you need to, or vice versa. So it's actually really, really important to remember that that agent oftentimes, like for me, my agent has all of the work that I've actually done has really come through me. Like, let's just call it what it is. Love you, Bets. But like, you know, like I've been doing all the work. And so really when it comes to contracts, I've been going through my attorney and things like that. So it's an important distinction that sometimes the attorney can actually be more valuable for you than the agent.
That makes perfect sense. I personally had that same kind of experience. So with my job, when I signed on to Bloomberg TV, they're not contracts. There are also not a lot of people who do agents there, but I retained an attorney to look over my employment agreement, and he was able to spot one sentence that missed some punctuation, that the entire meaning of the sentence changed without that comma. And so he said, so here's what you do. You put it here and then you initial it and then sign it and send it. Things like that. You know, while I read the entire contract, right, and I looked up a few things as well, I wouldn't have been able to spot that. So I can definitely agree that having an attorney is valuable.
Well, and even to the value piece of it, right? The attorney will oftentimes require a fee that you just pay them in that moment, unless it's someone that you know and they'll do it for you for free. Whereas the agent requires a percentage of your income over the duration of your contract, which is very different and a lot more money, right? So it's an important element as well.
And important to specify that agents get paid to find you work. If you, like Jarrett, find your own gigs or people find you, then consider carefully, should I have an agent at all, or should I simply just go with an attorney? So brilliant conversation. And so wait, Jesse, I want to know how you manage conflicts of interest, because you've written a few books, coffee table books as well, and you've published magazines. I believe you did that while you were independent. But how do you manage right now, working for such a huge brand? How do you manage navigating any conflicts of interest? Or do you make them work for you? Like, do you get them written into your?
No, that's an important question. And I handle it with, the short answer is carefully and with full disclosure. So as a journalist, you know, there are certain ethics that we really abide by if you want to have credibility in this business, if you want to have longevity in this business. And a lot of these guidelines have sort of gotten blurred in the new era for a lot of our younger younger colleagues. And so I do think that certain aspects of the business have changed, but I think there's certain bedrock principles that we have to hold on to. And the first one is that a conflict of interest doesn't necessarily mean an actual conflict. It can be the appearance of a conflict. So in other words, the audience, even though you may not be favoring somebody that you have a relationship with, if there's a perception that you favor them, then that could be a problem for you. And so you really have to disclose those things. So my policy with my job at ESPN is to have full disclosure. And I have to seek permission from them to do these books. And sometimes there's a negotiation involved, sometimes there are concerns, and I really have to respect that, because one thing I think it's important to remember, you know, I've always had a side gig. I've published, some of those magazines I've published have been when I was full-time employed by the Associated Press or by ESPN and things like that. And so you have to remember that your main gig is your main gig. That's the check that comes on the 1st and the 15th. And unless you're balling like you don't really need that, you have to give them priority. And so I've always made it clear when I was doing the Coach Thompson book, what are my job responsibilities? What are my deadlines? And then as long as you meet those, and as long as you abide by the regulations of your company, then they can't really, you know, they don't have any reason to bother you. So that's the way I've really navigated these. I have to get permission, and, you know, but it can work for you sometimes in that these side hustles can give you an added expertise or insight or relationships that you can bring to your job. So one example of that is when I did the Coach Thompson book, and then Georgetown out of nowhere won the Big East tournament and went to the NCAA tournament. Patrick Ewing took them there for the first time in like 8-9 years. It's a big story. So, oh snap, I know Coach Ewing. You know, I got the president of Georgetown University, his number's in my phone. And so I'm able to do a story that really brings this level of relationships that I would not have otherwise had. But you have to disclose it to your bosses. Is it okay if I do this? Are you guys fine with this? And then to the reader, I wrote this book. Yes, I'm rooting for Georgetown, but still, you know, so I think that that's the main way to do it. But it's a serious thing. You always have to give priority to your main gig, and you have to be honest and proactive about disclosing these things. The last thing is, if I could just take a quick moment to big up all these panelists here for this whole vibe right here. So first of all, my man Jarrett, we got the interior design going with the he's coordinated with the gold African medallion and the gold in the back with the lamps and the plant. The
it's
yellow
not even
dresses.
done yet.
Love it.
I still got shelves to go in.
The yellow dress is the springtime is popping, and then we gotta get the Brianna on the IG. Yes.
You were quick. You found me fast.
Let's go. I need some live drone footage. From our other colleagues. So yeah. So this is really good. It's good to be here. Thank you.
It is. Thank you so much. Like, listen, you pointed out something so important, because we would love to be able to think that we live in a world where ask for forgiveness, not permission, but it's not like that all the time.
Yeah.
Especially in my job, it's not like that. Just to be full disclosure, I have the same policy at my job. I had to get permission to do this panel. And so your priority is your main gig. You know, now how do you navigate? This is a curveball, Jesse, but it just came up and I have to ask. How do you navigate when it's something that you do on your side gig that ends up adding tremendous value to your main gig? Is there some bargaining power there for when the next raise comes up or the next review comes up, or is that an unethical, consideration? What is it?
I hope there's some extra value. I mean, I think that's part of the deal. I don't think that there's an ethical conflict there.
Okay.
As long as you are proceeding in cooperation with your gig. When it gets antagonistic, then that's when it could be a problem. Yeah. But I do think that those added values, and here's the other thing that we have to consider as journalists. If you are doing a journalistic side project, really by rights, you have to make sure that your main gig doesn't want that. Like, it's not in their lane. So when I'm working for the Associated Press and I'm running a street ball magazine, that's okay because the AP doesn't deal with street ball. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But I can't go and write a freelance article for the Root. Respect to the Root, but the Undefeated pays me for everything that I produce. And so the Undefeated now has a book imprint. Okay, so how's that going to work? They have asked me for the right of first refusal, and I thought it was in my best interest to give that to them. So if they want first dibs on something and want to make the right offer that would surpass the other offers, then we can talk. But that's quite honestly, the book imprint is new, and that's something that hasn't come up yet. But I mean, it all comes back to this point where if you value your main gig, if you want to stay there, if you're happy there, if they're treating you right, which the Undefeated checks all those boxes for me, and I'm very grateful for that. Then you really have to work with them and sort of it's a relationship.
Yeah.
And you might want to give some things up. But no, I think that me doing Coach Thompson's book makes me a more valuable employee and a more valuable commodity. And I did it on my own time after my Undefeated work was done. And it was a lot of late nights and sacrificing my leisure time and my Netflix time. Yeah. And so if that means that I'm worth more in my next contract evaluation, then I think that that's fair.
I think it's fair too. You brought up oh, yes, Jarrett, go ahead.
Jesse just talked about something though and Carmaine, I know you're up next, so please don't be mad at me for jumping in here.
Oh no.
Jump in anytime,
Jesse,
by the way, anybody.
Jesse talked about the appearance of a conflict of interest, and I think that's such an important thing because, for instance, for me, one of the things that I do, I'm a guest host at our NPR station here. It's KCRW, and it's a thing here. And so, me being president of NABJ LA, but also being on the staff at KCRW, but only being a guest host, I work there like 2 or 3 weeks out of the year. Like it's not like a full-time gig. But they recently had like a racism situation, and y'all know what that means. And so like there was a moment where there were people talking about their experience of being Black at KCRW. And so we had been doing some advocacy work with them and working on the ways that they are, adjusting their processes over at KCRW. But now that I'm president of NABJ LA, there's the appearance that could be a conflict, right? Even though I'm not even in that newsroom, I work there a couple of weeks out of the year. And now there's this idea that it could be a conflict. And so I've had to step away from anything that has to do with advocacy and KCRW because it looks like it could be a little shady. And even if I were to walk away from KCRW, where again, I don't even work that frequently, it still could look like it was a conflict. And so those are the kind of things that you have to be thinking about appearance of conflict of interest, even if there might not really be one there.
Very smart to note. Very smart. And
if I could note one more thing real quick on the conflict of interest, a lot of time the way to, everybody has to navigate these things and we can do it with integrity. And a lot of time look at your organization and I don't think that it's fair for the organization to hold us to a higher standard than they have. So for example, ESPN, which owns the Undefeated, does business with the NFL and the NBA, and we also cover them as journalists. And we have been able to do so in a manner where we retain the trust of our audience because our journalism discloses things and is ethical. And so, that's something that has had to been worked through in certain instances with ESPN. And so I think that sets a model for what we can do as journalists. So my one piece of advice would be, as you are navigating these conflict of interest things, remember to I think that we can't exempt our employers from the same standards that we have for us.
You know what, on that note, Jesse, you talked about how you sort of had check boxes, right? And one of those check boxes were if you're being treated well. And so it's a bit of a moment happening where not only the obvious racial reckoning that America has been going under more heavily for the last year, but people are looking at their employers and some are saying that, I don't know if I want to take this longer. I don't know how much longer I want to deal with this. So what are some good questions that people can ask themselves as to whether they're, quote, being treated well when it comes to these side gigs and what they can possibly do next?
Let's toss it to Carmaine and see what Carmaine has to say on that.
Okay.
Thanks, Jesse.
You're welcome. Hey, dog! Oh, we got dogs in the house. Who let the dogs out?
Yeah, that's my baby. He's a 4-year-old German Shepherd.
Okay. Just what kind of questions you would ask yourself? Like, is that? I mean, if you guys want to roll that question over, or let me know.
Yeah, I think you always have to, in general, practice it and evaluate if you're happy and satisfied being where you are. You have to gauge that, and also that comes a part of what your goals are, what you want to achieve. So that's a constant, I think, evaluation as you progress through your career. Mm-hmm. You have people just simply who just come to the conclusion that they're not happy where they are, and they change and switch and do something else. But that's just the constant evaluation. I've worked for an ABC O&O, I've worked for CBS O&O, and now for Warner. And none of those were really a thing with me being necessarily unhappy but I wanted wanted to get to a certain point and a certain level. So I had to do things because traditionally a lot of times what was happening, at least in my generation, you would get to a big local market and people stay. They settle in and stay. The salary is right enough for them. The city is right enough for them, and all of those different personal factors. So they end up staying. But that's their personal thing. 99.9% of the photographers in big markets and local news stay there for 40 years. And they staff. They don't move, they don't bump, they don't bob. It's just what they are. You have a few people like myself who want to get to more of a national stage, not global, and then you tend to move on. But that has everything to do with you and what you want to achieve.
Okay, that's important to note because many people, and I've talked to people recently who feel like this. They have this other thing that they do on the side. They're considering making it their main gig. Maybe they make more money there. Maybe they don't. Maybe what they will need is more time to be able to do that. And they consider themselves at a crossroads now. But what I hear you saying is that it's healthy to consistently ask yourself these questions.
What do you want to do? Sure. What do you want to do? I mean, there's nothing wrong with stepping away from. No, there have plenty of colleagues and friends who have stepped away from journalism. Totally, they've gone into marketing and PR, started their own companies, and have been very successful in doing so. Which is a different form of communications, right? So, and I know more people have done that than have not. So it's it's just a matter of you taking the leap and setting yourself up to be successful. And it started out as a side gig for them. It started out with smaller writing or doing PR on the weekends for smaller companies, small business. And then it just finally grew into something where they said, okay, fine, I can walk away from being part of the City of Chicago Mayor Press Corps and start my own PR firm.
So let's jump in there because you have been able to successfully become a dualpreneur, right? You have your main full-time job that you draw a salary from, and you also own a business. Warner Media is where Carmaine works as a drone pilot. How are you able to do that with your contract? Was it because you said—
Well, see, we don't have contracts. Cinematographers, we don't. People in field production don't have contracts. They have either what's being described as per diem or permalance or staff. Now, much like all of the points that Jesse said is true. And that has a lot to do with where you are, if you're a part of a union or you're not. So if you are part of a union, you have to also consider the bargaining contract of what they have come up with the company in regards to you doing side hustles. So, and it's always a good practice to disclose what it is that you're doing. Sometimes there's workarounds in regards to what I do with the network in regards to your immediate bosses within the network division or your bureau chief or how that works out. That's separate away from the collective bargaining agreement, but sometimes things like that happen, so and then when you have a situation like with Warner, there are non-union. So much like, and I believe, Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, ESPN is also maybe non-union, but with regards to that, you have to you can disclose, say, hey, I have this drone company, or I am a part of working with another company as some kind of ambassador, whether it's for a company that has technical ties into the industry, whether that's a lighting company or a camera company or a grip company. that you believe in their product, and you can go in and you can basically be an ambassador, but you have to disclose. You can say, hey, and they're usually, as long as there's no direct conflict, they're okay with it. They benefit from you doing that. You are able to grow in ways that maybe they're not able to grow you as a professional, because you're out doing different things that your main gig isn't able to put you out there to do yet. So if you're working on a major film in some way, or even a TV show, you don't get that kind of experience that has something to do with drama or whatever, but you could be just a utility person or something else. You're getting expertise that you would normally not have, and then you're bringing that expertise back to them, and then they say, oh man, this was great. How was this lit? Looks fantastic. What did you use for this and this? And then it could be turned into a thing where they want you to now train or help out other people. So you just, you have to find that middle ground of where you can navigate that and do both. But as long as you're respectful and you listen, your 9 to 5 is your 9 to 5.
Yep. That's
your bread and butter. You have to honor that. The best way that you know how, and still do what you can do, then usually they don't have an issue with it.
Disclose things, fully disclose them, and do so early enough so that it's a respectable amount of time. And also,
sure.
I would say, would you guys agree? Obviously, when you're in a situation where you're going into a new job, it's letting them know this during the interview process. Okay. Maybe it depends on what it is exactly. And so we're about to wrap up in the next couple of minutes. And I want to see if there are any questions here. Feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A function, everybody. And so while you do that, Carmaine, last thing with you is that you have speaking engagements, and you also have, in addition to your drone side gigs with real estate and with whatever other fantastic companies that you work with, and sometimes you do them both together. But how do you approach charging for speaking engagements? A lot of people want to know how they can become a speaker on whatever their expertise is and make it a really side income.
Well, for me, it just happened because there was quite a bit of write-ups about me in regards to being the first African-American woman who was licensed in the United States. And there were different non-for-profits, whether it's the YWCA, the Boy and Girl Scouts of America. They had come to me and started asking me to speak. You have colleges, the University of Nebraska, along with another organization that I'm part of with MPPA, where I'm a faculty member. They started, and they have a collaboration with the University of Oklahoma and different things like that. So they started to have me come in and actually help them when they're holding a session for their students to get them licensed as drone pilots. So it just kind of happened that way for me. But and I charge according to what I feel like it's worth. Whatever role that they have me playing, I charge them that amount of money. If I'm somewhere for a week, I don't pay for housing. I don't pay they have to pay for my plane ticket if I'm flying out of state. And then I charge them somewhere about $500 to speak or more.
Do you disclose all that to your job? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but do you disclose all of that to your job?
Well, that goes under my company.
Okay. And so
that goes under my company. So
Fair.
What's that?
So important to know, people, that goes under her company. But we do want to say that Brianna Hamblin has to go right now. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so sorry. I didn't want to interrupt. I was going to
No,
try to
it's
sneak
okay.
off.
Do you
But I
have a
actually
last
have like
word? Do you have a last word for like for 10 seconds, 20 seconds?
I'm actually leaving to go teach my noon dance class, but well, I mean, again, I agreed with everything that everyone said. I'm learning here too. I'm learning that I should probably in the next job, full-time job, bring up that I do this, make sure everything's okay with that. And I 100% agree. You need to make your side gig something you're passionate and love. So thank you all so much. I put in my email and social media in there. If you guys do have questions or just want to connect, I want to stay connected with you all. I feel like there's so much more conversations I want to have with you guys. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And also on your next job, you will have already established your presence because of your TikTok and everything else. So that's something.
Yeah, so give me a follow. We'll try to grow that.
Thank
you guys so much.
Enjoy.
It was an honor being on the panel with you all.
Thank you. We do have a question, folks, from someone in the audience. How do you know when it's time to leave the main gig and make the side hustle the main gig? Whoever wants to
when your side hustle becomes your main
drop.
gig. Yeah, when your side hustle becomes your basically main gig, that's when you know it's time to leave.
When you start making more money there.
Exactly. When your main gig becomes more than your income, then it's time for you to bounce.
I'll give you all a perfect example. I'm working on, as I started talking, I was like, why are you telling your business? But like I am getting ready to go into an agreement with a company that I'm going to be doing some work with for a while. And when we were talking about the pay, I was like, I'm sorry, what? And like it spoke to me in such a way that I was like, oh, well, what I won't be doing is X, Y, and Z over here, right? And so like when said contract is clear and the ink is dry and the first checks have cleared, then it's going to be like, okay, well, you know what? I don't need to do this over here anymore, or at least for a while, right? I can maintain those relationships and maybe, and you know, I might have to come back to that one day. You never know. But like when your side gig is making you enough money to be able to cover what your main gig was doing, then you can say like, okay, maybe I can figure out how to restructure it. Or as Jesse just put it so beautifully, when that bag drops. So like, it's perfect.
And you know, I have to add something to that too. You know, I was in a particular situation where there was an instance in Chicago where two photographers became the first drone pilots across the country, pretty much in news. So, and one of the myself included, and there was another man who did that. We were both freelancing at ABC and CBS, and the opportunity came for him. He was actually sort of licensed, and his company was licensed before the Part 107. So this is pre that date by 2 years. It used to be called an Exemption 333. So he started flying commercially and legally 2 years prior to 2016. And he is a photographer. He chose a route, making the drone his side hustle to see how far he can go with it. By the time he was offered a full-time job at WBBM, the exact same time I did, he accepted it literally for 24 hours and gave it back. Because his side hustle as owning his drone, and he put everything into that. He decided to stay freelance. He decided to contract out people to get more jobs. And by the time 2018 had rolled around, he had totally left news. And his yearly salary, his profit margin was tenfold.
Wow, tenfold.
That is when you decide you need to leave.
That's clear.
But it's interesting the route that we took, because when you have something like a drone business, you have to go all in.
Yeah.
You have to go all in. You have to, and sometimes you have to be confident enough in your reputation and what you have that you're able to do that. you're able. He still kept certain deals where he started doing cinematography. That's something that he always has, but it's all was just these drone jobs, and he did certain things to set himself up and apart from the regular now Mo, Larry, Curly who come in to want to have a drone business, so he does things for Hollywood, LA, and New York. He does really, really big time things. So literally his salary went for, let's just say, a 6-figure salary in the 100s to a 7-figure salary.
Okay.
That's when you know, yeah. And because I didn't go all in, it turned it out to be a little bit different. I wanted to pursue the network deal. He didn't necessarily want to do that, but he did something else.
Yeah. And Carmaine, you said something important. You got to go all in sometimes. And please, for those of you who are considering side hustles, don't underestimate the amount of time and energy it's going to take.
Sure. It takes a lot of time.
Commitment. It's a huge commitment, and it can easily come at the detriment of your main gig if you're not careful. So you have to balance that out. And
he was willing to take that risk. He was willing to take the risk.
I had some failed side hustles financially. I had some that worked. I had some that didn't, because it was more time than I thought, or, that's one of the main reasons. So not every of my side hustles has been a rousing success. Okay. So just something to think about. I know we're getting to the end point.
Yes. We are. And if Carmaine, if you can tell us this maybe in like 30 seconds, for you have your own company. Do you have LLC or S Corp? And quick advice to S Corp. And why do you have an S Corp?
My accountant found that it was better for me to do so. What happens with an LLC is that you cap your income.
Okay.
Yes.
And then same advice, quick advice for those who want to do the same as you. Get an accountant who can advise you on.
Yeah, you need a really good accountant. You need a really good accountant. You need a really good lawyer. I have all of those things. You have to have that if you have a drone business, because people will sue you. It's basically a flying robot. So.
And there are privacy rules against that. So
there are.
We gotta have a part.
Yeah.
We do. Quickly, because I'm so sorry to cut you guys off, but we only have less than 3 minutes. If I were to do a quick round the horn, any last words? Your case for should you always get a side gig just to have something to catch about outside of it? Should you, and why? Just about 15 seconds each, if you can.
I would say yes, because you just back yourself up with your main gig, and times can be turbulent. You never know when you're going to be laid off, and if it's something else that you also love to do, why not?
I would say get a side gig if it's something that you feel like you can sustain, because as Jesse and Carmaine were both saying, it can take a lot of work and a lot of time, and so if it's going to be something that you are attached to enough, that you believe in, or the need is significant enough, I would say go for it.
All right. And Jesse, you have the last word on this one.
Go for it if you love it, and if it does not, you're not already able to do it at your main gig. So if you can't do it at your main gig and it's something you really love and you're passionate about, go for it.
Excellent. Guys, we had an amazing panel, and I hope that we could do a part 2 someday, because I want to get into privacy concerns, and I want to get in a little bit more into contractual obligations, and maybe how you can convince employers to maybe change their minds on things, because I know that has happened before in some organizations. And so again, I want to thank you. I'm Renita Young. Thank you to Tori Parrish for putting us all together. Thank you, Carmaine, Jarrett, Jesse, and Brianna, who had to leave. And guys, I think there's a function where we can meet in the speaker's hallway after this. So from the main how you got into this panel today. So feel free to meet us there if you have the time. And if not, you can reach out to any of us on our social media platforms. I'm Renita Young. Thank you so much for joining us. And please, everyone, have a lovely Saturday. I hope it's beautiful outside wherever you are.